I was one of the co-founders of LinkedIn, started it together with four other people, and we basically noticed that in business a lot of it depends on relationships, and a lot of information is out there, and relationships are very important to sort through it and finding the right people, but there was no efficient way of systematizing that. So that became the basis for LinkedIn. And then about 9 months ago, I think the new interesting area of social networks are no longer the networks itself, but the applications that plug into those networks.
And applications like, give me an example.
The first one I think is YouTube. Without MySpace, probably YouTube would have never been what it was, but people putting their YouTube widgets on there. So what we at Jackster, we have a phone widget which allows people to call you through your social network, but you can still keep your phone number private because you may not feel comfortable sharing your phone number with 100 million people on MySpace. So.
Which brings us to your talk today, control versus benefit. Could you explain it?
Yes, I think privacy is very important in general, but what I'm mostly concerned about is, I do want to have benefit, and do I have control over where my information is? So when I self-publish something, that's pretty easy to control. Most systems are pretty good at it. It gets trickier when other people publish things about you. How do you control that? But then, if you really want to have the benefit of self-publishing, it means more and more communication comes your way, and it can eat up a lot of your time. And that's where the control over the communication becomes important. And I believe that's a growing area, and that's where we're dedicated to that at Jackster, especially around the idea of control. One of the main communication devices these days is the mobile phone.
But you also said that Web 2.0 isn't that much about publishing anymore. It's about another thing, about social networks and getting a job, getting a role.
Yes, I think in the early adopters were interested primarily on the social side. They were interested in self-expressions and kind of trying out things. But I think now it's becoming mainstream, and you have a lot of people in their 30s or 40s. That's not necessarily what they care about. What they care about is how do they pay for the mortgage for their house, how do they put their kids through school, how do they become successful in their profession, and that's really the mainstream audience of LinkedIn. And what tends to be is once you have kids and a lot of other obligations, you have less and less free time to really even experiment in entertainment, so it becomes very much focused on efficiency and control.
How large is an efficient network at LinkedIn? Is it 50 people, 200, or 500? And when does it become inefficient because you have too many contacts?
That's a very good question. I don't think there's a single answer. I think it depends very much on your line of business and what you're trying to do with that network. We thought about things. Should we impose a limit on it? Should we impose a limit of 200 or 500? Because some people just go overboard, I think, and then it doesn't really serve the core purpose. But for some people, 200 is too much. If you have only worked for 3 years and you work in an internal function, you probably should only have 10 or 15 connections. On the other hand, if you're a venture capitalist in Silicon Valley, you've been for 30 years and you sit on many boards, probably 500 is too little. So it really depends. The right answer, each one has to decide. But I think you're seeing in the beginning people just being cautious, and then people maybe connecting too widely, and now people are realizing that maybe there's a price for these connections, and so now people are pruning back the networks again to more the people they really know and trust and can put their reputation on the line for, which is great.
Should one have a plan for these kind of relationships?
Well, I think it's important you need to keep up with them. So if you're connected to more people than you can really keep up with, because sooner or later someone's going to ask you to introduce you to them, and you won't know, is this something I should pass on to the person? Because whenever you make an introduction, you want to basically make introductions that benefit you as well as the other person, because then you gain in social capital. And if you don't know what the other person is really interested, whenever you make a bad introduction, it impacts your relationship. And it's not even for something you self want, but someone else wants. So you need to be involved in your connections well enough that you know what they really appreciate and what they don't. And when they ask for things, you need to know them well enough to put your name on the line for them. So I think being in connection implies that you are willing to really stay in touch with each other.
Now, LinkedIn is a very clean business-like network communication tool. Other network websites are different. I mean, they're more social. How do you separate them as a person? I mean, the social and the business networks.
I think in Silicon Valley, a lot of people belong to several of these, but I think that's because they're interested in the technology itself. I think most people in the world, especially those that are joining now, they simply look at what is important to me, and is it making new friends or is it making an income? And if you are like myself, who has a kid, several kids, and their friends through kindergarten, you don't need more friends. It's hard enough to stay in touch with friends. So those types of networks, while I think I would have really loved to have them when I was 20, they were great. They would have been great. No longer really have much appeal to me. And so I think that's how it will shake out, that people go where their primary purpose is, and people who have extra time may do both.
But you also said in your speech that the face-to-face network or communication is the most important.
Oh, absolutely. And I think LinkedIn is just about the efficiency of finding the right person, leveraging your connections, but real business is always done face-to-face. So it's not, business doesn't happen on LinkedIn. LinkedIn facilitates it. But then, you don't hire somebody without, speaking to them face-to-face several times. I don't think that's going to change.
But when you have a LinkedIn profile like I have a LinkedIn profile, how do I sort of manage it so that it gives me the best result?
Well, I think you start thinking about what information you want to put there. So it's important to not just have a profile, to think of what's the purpose of this profile. For some people, the profile, the current purpose may be to find a better job, and so you structure your profile a certain way. In my case, as a CEO of Juxta, I'm not looking for a better job, but I want to show that I'm a good person, that people want to work at my company. So I structure it that way, or maybe for companies to do business with me. So you basically want to design your profile to attract the right kind of people, to communicate the right thing. Very much like marketing yourself, and I think that's really what's happening. It's kind of the me ink. People see themselves, and I think the Hollywood model, where each actor is sort of their own business person that gets hired out for certain films for a certain period of time, is where we're heading with societies. And that's why not everybody can afford an agent in Hollywood, but LinkedIn can be your agent that promotes you to the rest of the world, but also filters inbound opportunities that come towards you.
So is it about being found, or is it about finding someone else?
It depends. I mean, for a lot of people, it's just about being found, and they want to be found not by everybody, but selectively. I mean, maybe found, but not contacted. But if you have a specific purpose where you need to find information about a certain market or company, then you tend to get proactive. And the people who pay the bills at LinkedIn are not the people who are being found, because that's basically free. But when you really want to find well, that's when you do paid services. And the average subscriber of LinkedIn pays about $250 a year, so it's quite valuable to them.
But what do you get as a subscriber?
Well, most people use the free LinkedIn service, and that's the way we designed it. Rather than charging everybody a little, we know we are adding a lot of value to some people, so we figured we get a few people to pay a lot of money, and that way everybody else can use it for free. That's a better strategy for growing the network. But we have people who make investment decisions, for example. When you're a paid member, you can search not just your own network, but the whole 14 million network. And a typical network has maybe a couple 100,000 people in it, so you get access to 10 or 20 times more people. And you have the ability to contact people directly rather than through introductions. But there's a reputation system associated with it. And so people, if you contact people directly, it will give you a score of kind of 1 to 5 stars. So when you contact people, you still have an incentive to only contact people for whom you think you have something valuable to offer, because that reputation score, similar to eBay, still affects it. So those are the main benefits for the paying subscribers. So I think one of the first things you need to think about is how broadly do you want to distribute your profile? Again, it starts with your purpose. What are you trying to accomplish? And do you think people search for you on Google? If you do, you may want to publish some of your LinkedIn information to your LinkedIn web profile, which then gets picked up by Google. That way you can make sure that the right thing about you shows up at the first, the thing that you control, opposed to random mentions of other people maybe with the same name who aren't really you. In terms of what you want to put in, I think the important thing is to really highlight your professional credentials. I mean, what have you actually done for other people, and impress people with facts, and with the quality of your relationships rather than with a lot of puff, sort of saying how great you are and having as many people. I think the quality is what really shines through. And part of the quality is, do you have recommendations from your former bosses or people you've worked with, or if you're a service provider, from your clients? Those go a long way from distinguishing yourself from others, because not only are those recommendations, you might see those on the website, but people can look at who the recommender is, or they may even know the recommender. In fact, if you are a service provider, the only way you get into the LinkedIn services directory if one of your past clients has recommended you. So it's actually essential if you want to show up there as a lawyer or as a recruiter or as even a nanny.